Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellness Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kirsty Kianifard. So today is a collective member of the month episode, and I'm so excited for you to meet this guest and our collective member, the lovely Carelle Rose. How are you, lovely?
I'm good, thanks, Kirsty. You all right?
I'm very well, thank you. Very excited because just before we pressed record on this, I just found out that something that we've spoken about a lot together, which is your podcast, you've just released the visuals of. So it's got me into a very excited mood, but we're going to get into more of that later. But first of all, you are a reflexologist, a pro Gua Sha therapist, face yoga instructor. So just tell us a little bit about Carelle. Like, how did you get into the wellness industry? What got you started?
Gosh, okay. So it's only really been my job more recently, but it's been kind of whirring in the background on my bucket list actually since probably I'd say late teens, early 20s. And even though it was never my job or my intention for it to become my career, I knew that probably as soon as I had children, that holistic passion in me that I'd sort of been like hiding away a little bit, I suppose, would really kind of come out to the forefront. And I guess it sort of all hit me in the face a little bit when I was in my late teens, early 20s, because I was very much at a crossroads in my life. And the phrase, which I'm sure you've heard as well, Kirsty, is from patient to practitioner, really applies to me, because quite often we talk to other wellness entrepreneurs and holistic therapists, and quite often it's born from a place of despair and like, I actually need this myself. So originally being a patient to then becoming practitioner, and that was very much the case for me. And I don't really talk about this much on my social media or anything like that, but actually I used to be a singer-songwriter, and I really thought that that was my career mapped out. You know, when you're kind of like, people around you are like, oh my gosh, you could do this professionally. And then I picked up a guitar and just started songwriting and gigging and singing and all of that kind of thing. And I just thought, okay, well, this is clearly my route in life. This is what's going to happen. So I made some conscious decisions to sort of not necessarily go to uni and, really pour a lot of my money and time into songwriting and singing. And then I ended up having very severe allergies, and it kind of sort of came out of nowhere. I had a few sort of little allergies when I was younger, but this was like next level. And I would go to the studio to record something, and I would come back and I would listen to it, and I'd be like, this just doesn't sound like it used to. Like, I can really tell my sinuses, my chest, I am just not actually that well. And then I would start thinking, when was the last time I felt really healthy? And I was like, that was a long time ago. And anyway, I realized that my allergies were accumulative. So not only was I becoming very allergic to my mum's dogs, because I was living at home at the time, I was becoming allergic to, if I put bleach down the toilet, I started getting tight chested and I couldn't really breathe. Anyone with strong perfume or aftershave. And it was becoming really quite bad. And naturally really affecting my singing. And I just thought to myself, okay, something has to happen here, because I'm at a crossroads where this is either going to work out or I'm really completely wasting my time. And I'm from a family where both my parents are very much, look, if you've got a problem, what's the solution? We're not ones to, I've never been able to just sort of wallow in self-pity or thinking, oh, this is so unfair. It's kind of like, yeah, well, this is the situation, but what are we going to do about it? And bless my mum in particular, she did a lot of research on my allergies and what I can be doing rather than just getting, my steroid inhalers and my sinus operation. Because the drugs that I was taking, Kirsty, like, I was walking out the pharmacist with the biggest bag of drugs that I was taking. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was kind of 19, 18, just thinking, well, I'll just take this and everything will be okay. And then it wasn't. And bless my mum knew how much I wanted to do this and the singing. So she actually built me a little outhouse in the garden to remove me from my allergy triggers so I could still live at home, but I could have like a self-contained area where I could sleep and do my songwriting, where I wasn't with the dogs and the cats and, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, I would start booking myself into gigs and realizing that, I remember there was one in London, I sat next to somebody on the tube in rush hour who had just put a lot of aftershave on. Maybe he was going on a date, I don't know. But I just stopped being able to breathe properly. And I just immediately was like, I'm not going to be able to sing tonight. Wow. This is just terrible. So anyway, I then realized that it probably wasn't going to happen, but the anxiety that I had through this was enormous, because even though I was moving myself away from what I thought were my triggers, and I was trying to, you know, wean myself off all of this medication and these steroids, actually it had really affected me mentally. So I would book myself into a gig, and then the night before I'd go to bed early, I'd do everything right, I'd steam, I'd do vocal warm-ups, I'd do da-da-da-da-da. And it was my mind that was like, what if this happens? What if this happens? And I would wake up with my symptoms for no rhyme or reason. I would wake up and I would have a blocked nose. I would feel like I was going to get laryngitis. I felt like my chest was tight and I needed my inhaler. And I realized it was so psychosomatic. And so I was like, right, I need to sort this out mentally as well. So I booked myself in to see a reflexologist. And for me, I was like, look, I'm not expecting miracles. I've done my research. I know what reflexology is. I know what it does. And she's not gonna, you know, click her fingers and suddenly I'm okay and I sound like Whitney Houston. Like, obviously not. But it just made me feel like I had a little bit of control, because I felt so powerless. I felt so out of control, and that what I thought was my dream, which actually I now look back and think, God, I was not made to be a singer in the music industry. Like, I'm now doing what I absolutely was meant to do. Like, I feel that now at my age. But at the time, this reflexologist just made me feel calmer. She made me feel like she had crystals in her little reflexology room. She had like wood chimes hanging outside. And as I was floating off and she was working my reflexes on my feet, I just felt like I was transported into another world where I wasn't worried. And I had done so many different jobs to try and fund my studio sessions and to pay for this and to pay for a photographer and, you know, all of this stuff. And I felt like my life's work, even though I was young, was just literally going down the drain. And she transported me into this other world. And I remember saying, whatever happens with my music, one day when I have babies myself, I want to know reflexology. I want to have a holistic modality that I can give my children. So when they feel anxious or when they have a headache, yes, I can give them Calpol, no judgment there. I give my children Calpol, but I can bring that extra layer, and I can say, right, give me your feet and I want to work your head reflex, you know, your spine, you know, your lungs, whatever it is. And that has always been on my bucket list. So when I said to my husband after I had my first daughter, I was like, do you know what? I know I've got a really busy job and I've got this going on and we've just got married and blah, 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 blah. I want to learn to be a reflexologist. And that's kind of how it all happened. And that opened up the door for me. And I didn't have any intention on it becoming my career. It was literally just for me to do the hard work, do the exams, and just to use it on my friends and family and my children. But now I actually feel like I'm fulfilling my career that I always should have had. And that's all of that singing and all of that has led me to doing this. And I feel so fulfilled now. And I look back and I just think, my gosh, if I got signed and I became a singer full time, I would be so different. And it's just not me. And now this is me. So I feel like it's really kind of done a 360.
Oh, I love that story. And people have heard me say it on this podcast so often, but this is why I love this industry, because everyone's gone through their own personal transformation to be a wellness entrepreneur. It's not really ever something you just like grow up and that's the only thing you want to do. It's like it's changed your life in some way. And so the thought of like, so how could I not pass this on? How could I not give this as a gift to others? I love that story. It's so powerful. But a lot's come up for me as you were talking. First of all, I'd love to know what job you did. So you said you were really busy when you had your first child. What did you then do after, you know, the singing didn't work out?
I had lots of different jobs after I actually worked at ITV for a little bit, which was really cool, because I decided that if I wasn't going to sing, I still loved the industry. So why don't I try my hand at presenting?
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of presenting, and then I worked behind the scenes at ITV show This Morning. So I loved doing that, but that again was short-lived because I was a freelance and that kind of thing. And then whilst I was doing my music, I then met my husband, who is in the music industry. So again, that crossroads in my life where I actually labeled myself as a failure because I didn't make it, as they say in the industry, I actually found my husband and reflexology. So, and my husband's in the music industry. So we got married and we decided to set up, I wanted to join forces with him because he's a tour manager and I've always kind of loved business. And so I was very much behind the scenes whilst he went on tour and he was doing all the touring and that kind of thing. But again, I felt really unfulfilled because I was like, but there's something inside of me that wants to speak to people and help people. And, you know, if my friend was unwell or not happy or whatever, I was always kind of that person that was like, well, have you tried this? Have you read this book? Have you listened to this podcast? You know, that is just fundamentally me. So even though my husband and I, we were working together and we loved it, and actually we worked really well together, I had that real sense of unfulfillment. And, you know, the music industry is great, and I was able to dabble in it without being the artist, which actually suited me really well. But now I'm doing my own thing because I've always wanted my own business. And I feel like everything that means something to me, I can share. So even when I do a Gua Sha one-to-one consultation, and, you know, I've got clients coming to me to talk about, you know, I'm really not happy with this element of my face or my jaw tension or whatever. What I want to do is I want to look, you know, underneath the surface and actually, from my reflexology point of view, think about what else they might need. It's not just about skin for me. It's so much deeper than that. And so that's what I love. That's why I feel so passionate about what I'm doing now.
I love it. And you've got a great combination there. I think those reflexology, when I was a practitioner, I never trained in it because it was like I just loved it. It's like this gem that, you know what it's like, as soon as you train in something, you can't receive it in the same way because you're like, oh, what are they doing there? Oh, I don't like that. What's going on? So I was like, I never wanted to not be able to totally zone out. And still to this day, it's my most favorite treatment. Like since my surgery, that's what I've been having every week to really understand what's going on. So I can totally understand why that would give you this really powerful sort of roadmap, I suppose, to help yourself and others. I'm curious, do you still have the same issue with the allergies, or do you feel like that was entwined with maybe, you know, not living in full alignment?
Yeah, okay. So actually what happened to me, and this was obviously a long time ago now, so this was a very new thing, and it has absolutely changed my life, but I ended up having low dose immunotherapy.
Okay.
So I went to a special hospital and they created a vaccination for me, an injection of everything that I was allergic to at a dosage that my body could handle.
Wow.
And I injected that every day for 5 years. And I would then go back after a few months to get my allergens sort of changed and tweaked. If I felt like I was getting a new allergy, then we would add that to the vaccination, and then we would up the dosage each time. And my body started resisting it because I had built up the resistance because I was actually injecting the allergens. Rather than removing everything from my life and living a life where I'm stuck in a box where I can't go anywhere because everything's just too much. I actually started being able to live again. And whilst I was doing that, because I knew that it would really take 5 years to take, you know, really great effects, I thought, well, in 5 years, I'm going to be, I don't know, I can't remember how old, 25. And do I really want to be doing this for 5? Actually, I want to get on with my life. Yeah. I want to move forward. I want to keep going. So it hasn't cured me completely. I remember when I ended up having a dog, I had a dog 4 years ago, and I remember at first thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? I'm really unwell with her. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel horrendous. But again, after a few months and I built up that resistance to her, I'm not allergic to her at all. But what it has done is it's really made me think about myself holistically. So for example, if I feel tight chested, rather than thinking, oh, where's my inhaler, which is kind of what I used to, it's like, okay, what can I cook? What can I shove a shite load of garlic in? Because I know garlic is amazing for my chest. You know, and I'm going to, you know, I don't eat so much dairy now. And, you know, I've got a herbal tea, which really helps my lungs if I'm feeling tight chested. And so I'm so equipped now. It's opened up my eyes that actually it's not a question for me of, I've got this problem, so I'm just going to go to the doctors. And I'm not knocking that at all. But what I feel really passionate about is that what can I do from home and what can the professionals do? And that for me is the winning combination, which is why now what I teach is so exciting, because it's kind of like, look, if you want to do this on your skin and you want to have these really great facials with all this technology, or you want to have Botox or filler, you know, that's great, you go for it. But if you also want to do something from home that will help you, that will make you feel better, that will help with your skin goal or your tight chest or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. We have so much power within ourselves. And I guess this is why I'm so passionate about it, because I didn't realize that before. I was like, well, I'm that person with loads of allergies, so, you know, sucks to be me. Yeah. And actually, no, like it was just a blip. It was just a few chapters. And now, you know, my eyes are so widely open. And I'm always thinking, you know, if my kids have got a cold, what can I do? What can I do? If it gets out of hand, I'll take them to the doctors. But what can I do? Like, I'm so excited to be like, I'm like a witch. But I think that's really exciting.
It is exciting. And I think there's no greater gift in the world than personal empowerment. You know, like if to feel powerless is probably the worst feeling in the world in any arena in your life. So to just, and I think that's what's so brilliant about the wellness industry and why I'm so pro all this choice of different tools in the space. There's no one that is better. I think to be able to have all of the sort of open that treasure chest and have lots of tools you can pull out and use and inquire and all of that stuff. And as you say, it's not to make anything else redundant, but it's to empower yourself to know that those little niggles you get, that little bit of communication, you build a relationship with it, as opposed to feeling totally like, man overboard, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Totally. And I'm like, so many times I look back in my life and I felt like my back was against the ropes, and actually it wasn't. I just didn't have the tools. Like I just didn't. And I look back and I think when my allergies were at their worst and I was, you know, doing my singing, yes, but I certainly didn't have the focus that I have with what I'm doing now. You know, I had a boyfriend at the time, and, you know, I'd passed my driving test, and, you know, it was all kind of like, you know, what you're like when you're at that age. And I was just, you know, quick and easy meals. I wasn't actually nourishing my body. I wasn't taking anything really that seriously.
Yeah.
And now I listen to my body and I do my best. And when I feel like I'm not listening to my body, oh my gosh, do I feel it?
For sure.
And I've got to check back in, and I've got to go, okay, hang on a minute. What is going on here? Why are you feeling like this? And what can I actually do about it? And you're right, it's that empowerment. It's not making anything else redundant, but you're actually just elevating your own responsibility for yourself.
Yeah, and it gets to be fun and exciting, like to know yourself and know your body and experiment, obviously safely, but you know, to experiment with tools that you have and see what works, see how your body responds. It gets to be a growing relationship as a, you know, I have so many people that are just frustrated with their bodies, or they get angry at themselves for feeling a certain way, and, you know, just pop in a paracetamol hoping it will go away without that real sort of inquiry. So yeah, it's so interesting, your story, but I'd love to know more about then that transition to being an entrepreneur, to being in business, and whether, I imagine the industry that you've come from, quite harsh, quite like, you got to be good with rejection. I wrote some words down here, like failure, fear of failure, purpose, you know, that are questioning like the self-doubt, is this for me? Am I in the right space? So did some of that prepare you, do you think, for then stepping into a different world, the wellness world, but still an industry that, you know, there's competition, there's growth, there's business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my dad is an entrepreneur, he works for himself. So does my mum, and so does my brother. So it's always been kind of in my world from early doors. You know, my mum and my dad worked together when I was born. So I remember my mum was still doing my dad's accounts and, you know, banging on the massive calculator in the 90s all my life. You know, they were working together, and that was always sort of what I know. In terms of when I was doing my singing, I would actually say that my confidence was at an all-time low. I had this bravado, and I would put a selfie up on my Instagram, and I would put a video of me singing on YouTube, and actually what that brought to me was very much self-doubt. Do I look right? Because everyone wants to have, you know, the right look. And it became so far away from my voice and my songs and my talent in my mind. It was very much about, am I doing it right? Am I looking right? Is this you know, I'd take a picture to post and I'd be like, are you sure I look nice? Are you sure? Are you sure I look okay? And I now look back and I'm like, good grief. Like, that is so bloody damaging. But that was just the industry, and that's what I thought I had to do to get noticed. And now, what I love about my Instagram account now is that I just don't care. I really don't. And so my business now it's my own, and I've never had my own business before, but I've always known I've wanted one. Now, everything I do is born out of a place of, it's because I bloody want to do it. And it feels right for me. And I don't care really, because I now appreciate that authenticity. If someone doesn't want to follow me anymore, I think, please unfollow me, please, because we should all be in a place where we feel we have control over what we see, what we watch, who is allowed to kind of get sucked into our brain through looking at our phones. And so I really feel, what's that saying about, like, you know, if you speak your truth, you attract your tribe. And I feel like back in the day, I wasn't attracting my tribe, like my core tribe of people. I was trying to attract people that just wanted to know whether I'd make it or not, or whether they could sign me, or whether they could come to my gig and judge me. And, you know, whereas now it's completely different, which is why I think I love it so much, which is why I am very much an advocate now, especially now I've got 2 daughters, of try, if you can, I know it's hard, but wean off the filters, wean off this, wean off that, because I'm so much happier now. I am me unapologetically, and I'm not overthinking anything. I'm not overanalyzing it. I'm just really, I try to be really honest. And I think as soon as I'm about to post something on my Instagram, or I'm trying to make the next move in my business, and I overthink and I overthink and I overthink, I'm like, right, okay, just stop, walk away, and just kind of remove yourself from that situation. And I, like you mentioned at the start, that I'm now going to be launching my podcast, and you and I have been talking about my podcast for ages. So I've been like, right, Kirsty, I need some advice. What do you think of my idea? Blah, blah, blah. And I've realized that I've been stopping myself from getting it out there because I've wanted it to be perfect. And actually yesterday I had a bit of a meltdown, I had a bit of a cry, and I thought to myself, do you know what? This podcast is born out of a real emotion and a real genuine desire. So if I can't talk about my podcast when I'm feeling in this vulnerable state, I'm never going to do it. So I did. So I really do feel like I recognize the signs of from back in the day, and I try and remove myself away from them. And I think that has really helped me with my business now, not to overanalyze and just be me, because I didn't feel like I was me before.
Yeah. And before we get into your pod, I just want to backpedal a bit on that, because I know so many people listening to this. I know my ideal client so well. And I know so many people listening to this would be like, Carelle, but I want that. Like, I really want to not give a shit. I really want to, like, I just took a photo and, I have clients that spend ages on something and then the next day they take it down because they're like, oh, I just couldn't. I went back to it and it looked weird. I sounded weird. I thought someone might interpret it. Yeah. So, and I know we're all looking for that, particularly, I think, because this one hang up can feel like it blocks so much, because it's not that you lack ideas and it's not that you're not excited about them, but it's almost like I always say, just as you're about to like cross the start line, you just never do, it's that sort of panic. So what words of wisdom would you give someone listening that's like, I'm still overthinking everything and I'm worried about how I'm going to be, interpreted? How do they get to that place of genuinely not caring anymore?
I think for me, I really sort of, I don't want to say sat down because I didn't literally sit down and do this, but I thought about all the people that I love and that I like. Who do I like spending my time with? Who do I like following on Instagram? Who makes me feel good? And what do all those people have in common? And for me, they are just themselves. And I was like, well, if I love them and they're being themselves, and that's why I choose to follow them on Instagram, that's why I choose to hang out with that person in real life, why would I not feel confident in being myself as well? And then everything that I try and do, I try and think, am I doing this? Like, what am I putting out there into the world from a business point of view? And if I fast forward the time to my daughters being at an impressionable age when they're on social media, am I the kind of account that I would want them to follow, or am I not? Do I want them to be looking up to me as their mother, who has so much self-doubt, who puts a picture up and thinks, oh, well, I don't actually look as great as I wanted to, so I'll take it down? I really have my daughters in my mind all the time. And, if you don't have kids and you don't have daughters, it's just somebody else. And for me, I just always think, well, how can I encourage them to reach for the stars? And God, it sounds really cringy, but how can I encourage them to do what they love if I'm not?
Yeah. And I think we can extend that to your clients. So many, whether, your clients might not have Instagram or they might not be interested in social media, but maybe the way they're finding you and following you is through social media. And it's like being that walking embodiment. So much of what we teach with wellness practices, even if they're hands-on, is about loving yourself, is about believing in yourself, is about not caring about the flaws or messing up, like being really authentic. And I sometimes think we forget that. People can't connect to you if there's this like filtered screen that's projecting something that is just not possible to attain. So yeah, I really relate to that. And I think it's just coming back to service, isn't it? Coming back to why we do the thing we do. And it's not like, we are not influencers. We're wellness practitioners that want to, bestow that message of being kind to ourselves and to other people.
Yeah, totally. And I have clients that, they'll book into a workshop and they'll say, gosh, that's the first time I've done anything actually for myself in such a long time. And what's so exciting is they then realize that it felt good. And it's like, well, that's because you are worthy of that. And I think it's a domino effect. So then hopefully when it comes to them looking at themselves in the mirror or looking at a picture or trying to achieve something in their business or in their work or whatever, all of these tiny little kind of like fist bumps that you give yourself, they make a wave. And it's kind of like, well, actually, I am worthy and I don't care who doesn't think I am, because I know I am. It's kind of having that real element of self-belief, even if you don't feel it. Like, fake it. Tell yourself that you believe in yourself until you do.
Yeah. Or ask yourself those questions, like, what would it feel like if I believed in myself? If I felt the opposite of what I feel right now, what would it feel like? I think sometimes we have access to this spectrum of feelings all the time. And sometimes when we play almost play make believe with ourselves. That's what we did when we were kids. Yeah, I'd feel like this, I'd stand like this, I'd put this out there, and then you realize that's not so much of a stretch. So it's like connected with that. So then this segues us beautifully to the bits in between. So this is the name of your brand new podcast, which when we release this episode, the first episode of this podcast should be out, like major accountability moment. And yeah, and tell us about the podcast. So tell us, about practicals of that, how that's come about, but also what are the bits in between?
Okay, so I feel very much like I was saying a bit earlier that my business, I don't claim to know how to run a business. I know what I know and I love what I do, but I am always learning so much. But I have engineered myself to be in a situation where I feel very supported with my business. So Kirsty, I come to you for advice. There's lots of other wellness entrepreneurs that I have now connected to, that we all support one another thanks to you. So for me, I don't feel like my business stresses me out. It challenges me, it pushes me, but I love it. And the other massive thing in my life is my family. I'm a mum. So again, if I feel like I need some advice, I've got people that I can speak to, that I can vent to. There's mother podcasts, there's books, there's all of that stuff. Again, I feel very held. If I want help and support, I feel held and I can tap into all of that is available to me. So when I step back and I think, okay, so where are my challenges in my life? What actually causes me the most stress? And when I really thought about it, I thought, well, actually, it's everything in between my business and my family life. And what I mean by that is, running out the door and realizing that it's really bloody cold outside and I'm scrambling around for the left glove of my 3-year-old's pair of gloves. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where is it? That for me makes me really stressed. That for me really makes my energy negative. And I was fine 5 minutes ago. For me, the bits in between is keeping up with the life admin, the form filling, the renewing the club, the remembering it, the jumper day, or children in need at nursery. Like, it's all these things that are kind of making me feel like I'm drowning, but my pleasure is work and my family, but everything else in between still has to happen.
Yes.
And I sort of took a step back and I thought to myself, well, on some days I'll listen to your podcast, Kirsty, because I'm in the mindset of, right, how can I improve myself with my business, or a parenting podcast. But actually, where is the help and support for the bits in between that we all have to do? Where is that? Like, there are billions of people in this world and we're all dealing with the same laundry pile and ironing and cooking the meals and the dinners and all of this stuff. And like, for example, not a very glamorous example, but it's real life. I've got a dog. I have to go into the garden, come rain or shine, and clear up her dog poo, right? I don't want to be doing that. So that just gets pushed further down on the list, but I still have to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's like all these things. At what point am I meant to do them? What, in my free time? But isn't my free time meant to be for me?
Yeah.
But it's not. So I have a working schedule. I then have my parenting schedule. So I know when I have to look after my kids. And then I finally get them to bed. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, I now need to do the washing, the laundry. I need to clear up the dog poo. I need to sort out the online shop. I need to buy this. I need to do this. And it's kind of like, I have so many clients that really want to use their Gua Sha more and put their face yoga exercises that I've taught them into practice. And they come to me and they're like, I can't fit it in. And I think a lot of that is because we are so weighed down in this modern day by the bits in between our two biggest jobs. And for me, obviously, that's parenting and my business. So my podcast idea was essentially just to open up that conversation. If we need to vent, we'll vent. If I want to interview people that inspire me, just to kind of get an insight into how they manage, whether they manage it or not. There's this big pressure on this juggle. I don't think anyone's juggling, and no one's juggling it and balancing it well all the time. somebody might have a great work-life balance, and then they go on holiday for 2 weeks, they come home and they've got so much laundry to do, their kids are unwell, there's a sick bug, and do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, and then suddenly are they in balance? No. So it's so relatable.
Yeah, I love it. When you came through this idea, I got so excited. I think it's going to be massive, because I think there's so much in this. There's the sort of deepening what we've already said. So it's just sort of being more yourself. I think there's still parts of all of us, habits we have, things that we really don't like about ourselves in this bits in between, things that we never get sorted. It's always a thing. It causes arguments. It's like you're in your creative flow, and then you got that niggle like, oh my God, I still haven't done that thing, or oh my goodness, I've forgotten. But then there's also, so there's outing it in a way, so that we can all go, oh, it's not just me, you know, everyone, or you have other things, you know, like, oh no, I'm fine with that. But, you know, as you say, and then we can share tools. But it's also because there's so much stigma attached. There's so much, and I'm laughing because as we're having this conversation, my cleaners are in, and the house they see when they come in to clean is not my normal house. So I spend like an hour and a half probably going through every room, not cleaning, I'm not quite like my mum, but I will get it to a place where I feel, because I feel like they're going to judge me. I feel like if I come in and it's not all exactly where it should be, I'm like, oh, they're going to say this about me, they're going to be having and it's probably bullshit. They probably could not care less. But it's all of the stigma and the judgment and the shame that we carry, that personally I find it weighs heavy, and it then starts to, like little Pac-Man, like eat into the creative time on your business, or the presence with your kids, or the just wanting to go for dinner with your friends. It's like, even if you're doing those things, you can still feel all of that gunk that's sort of around you.
It's the mental load that we carry.
Yeah,
it's astonishing. And the real kind of cherry to what I hope this podcast will do is, if we can just offload, as you say, and I can so relate to that. My cleaners came this morning, right? I did the exact same thing. By the time I've got my house straight and worthy for my cleaners, I should have just blooming cleaned it myself, because I'm
100%.
putting things back in the boxes and making sure that the washing basket can close, because I, you know, and it's just like, you know, yes, I feel privileged that I choose to spend my money on a cleaner, but actually I'm giving myself a huge job before they come, because my house isn't straight. And again, it's that feeling that they're going to judge me for it. And then I feel like I have to sort of subtly justify, well, I'm just been really busy, just in case they're judging me, because, you know what I mean? I'm trying to almost make an excuse for myself. And it's, again, you're saying, like, it just is weighing me down. And it then, the bits in between start filtering into my work and filtering into how I parent. And that is where I end up feeling like I am drowning. And I just can't, I've got to find a way, a platform, a solution where this conversation is opened up. And that is essentially what I want to do with it, because I feel like if we can learn from each other, you know, Kirsty, you might have a little tip on something or other that I think, oh, I'm going to apply that, and that's going to save me time. Then what my absolute passion and goal is that when we do have that time where it's our free time, the life admin and the bits in between are kind of under control a little bit more. So then we do feel like we can finally do something for ourselves, because we need to. And again, that then ties into my reflexology of, we need to be in tune with ourselves. We need to care for ourselves. We need to look after and nurture ourselves as much as we would the other people that we love. But it's very hard to, when the modern day way of life infiltrates us in our free time.
And I think it's really important, actually, that this narrative comes out of the wellness industry, because as much as I adore it, which I do to the depths of my being, I'm also not, I don't ignore some of the unhelpful narratives that we uphold as well. There are many that I could list right now, but one of those is definitely this, like, you have the same amount of hours as Beyonce. It's like, it's this idea that you're not doing your self-care because you don't love yourself enough, you're not prioritizing yourself enough, you're prioritizing social media. And while some of those things might be true, what I love that it's coming out of the wellness industry is you're saying, I teach these tools, I hear that too. And maybe, yeah, maybe sometimes we do, you know, distract ourselves and whatever, but that's life. We are going to do those things. But there's also just this really practical reason why we're not doing it. You know, there is a huge amount of things that we're expected to do, especially recording this in December. I mean, I don't know about your kids' school, but I mean, the amount of extra work around Christmas, you know, all the teachers' presents and all the different Christmas hat day, Christmas jumper day, and then the guilt if you forget it or you send them in on the wrong day, and then the WhatsApp group of all the mums pinging off and dads pinging off. You know, it's recognizing that sometimes it isn't a mindset thing, sometimes it's not, that I've got your priorities wrong. Sometimes life is just really flipping full on. And if we could just be a bit more level on that and share our tips and tools, maybe we could all navigate it more easily.
Totally. And I love what you're saying, because it's making me remember things that I did that I think a lot of other people would beat themselves up about it. Oh my God, and I forgot that for my kid, and I forgot to do this, and I forgot to do that. And I think we are so now in a place where we're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to beat myself up. Oh, I'm a terrible mother. And actually, what we need to do is remove the judgment and just laugh at ourselves and just think, do you know what? Me and millions of other people out there did just that. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like not judging ourselves anymore, because we're all in this together. And this is not a glamorous subject matter. Like, that's probably why I haven't been able to really find what I'm looking for, which has probably given me the podcast idea. It's not a glamorous subject matter, but it's one that I really feel needs to be out there, because we are all trying to keep our head above water. And if we can do it in a way that reserves a little bit of time and energy at the end of it for ourselves, then that's got to be the future, because we can't just keep carrying on like this. And the lack of communication as well, you know, I speak to my husband now and I'm like, I actually need you to take responsibility of this. I'm not reminding you, because again, that's my mental load. That's a job in itself, just to remind you, this is your thing. And just by saying it out loud, he now does it.
Yeah. I've had something recently, it's totally revolutionized, excuse me, mine and my husband's relationship. I've just added him to all the WhatsApp groups. I was just like admin of the WhatsApp group of my 3 kids, 3 different classes. I was like, can you add my husband? Like, why am I receiving all the messages and then having to tell him, or not bothering because I've got all the info anyway? And it's been insane. I'll be working and it'll be pinging off, and then I'll see him like input, and I'm like, oh, I don't need to do that anymore. And also I was like, how old school is this, that each WhatsApp group is just for the female caregivers? I was like, fuck that. Do you know what I mean? And then you start to see other families doing it, putting the grandma in or putting whoever helps you. And I was just like, yes, come on.
Music to my ears, Kirsty. I love this. It's like, I was speaking to my friend the other day and I'm like, do you know what? This is what really is going to annoy me. If my child is at nursery and she's not well, do you know what they're going to do? They're going to call me first. They're going to call me first. I'm sorry, but I run my own business just like my husband. Mm-hmm. Why are you going to automatically call me and say, I'm sorry, you've got to stop what you're doing because you've got to collect your child? Well, actually, what about calling my husband and saying, are you in a position to stop what you're doing to collect your child? Because obviously one of us will, and I would stop anything to look after her. Of course, but it's the principle. Yeah, it's the principle now. So I feel very excited, and I feel, Kirsty, come on, you have so much
to be on. I would love to be on. I mean, you know, I'm so brutal with it, because I think, you know, mine and my husband's roles have really reversed. I am the main breadwinner in the family now. So it's like, but I was still for a long time, and probably still am a bit, but that's probably my own slight control freak nature. You know, I was doing all the things, and I was like, hang on a minute. And as you say, it's the mental load. And I think none of us have got it right, you know, but we have got an opportunity, which you're now giving us, to have these open conversations, be imperfect. I think what will be a massive part of this podcast, which will probably happen really organically, is just a bit of humor and a bit of comedy. You know, we've all probably got the most bonkers stories that we could say just to stop, I don't know, some judgment, or just like what we did in the 5 minutes before we suddenly realized someone was coming around, whatever. And I think it lightens it, you know?
Totally. And that's the thing, like Instagram is making us believe that everyone has their shit together. And like, you know, you might see an influencer's beautiful, immaculate kitchen and living room, and I bet you, if you go in and you rummage through those cupboards, shit is gonna fall out on you.
Yeah, they're just like, they're trying to get it shut. Or like they just, you know, just make a little corner of it look amazing. Or yeah.
Love it. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it does. And I think I was worried that my audience, and I actually asked you this question, I was worried that my audience, you know, I don't have a huge following, but for them to just maybe presume that it was going to be about skincare and Gua Sha and face yoga, because, you know, I've mentioned that I've got this podcast idea that I want to develop, and I really was a bit kind of hesitant that people are going to think this is really like a bit sort of off the wall, because it's not necessarily linked to my business. But actually the link is huge. It's just not necessarily like blindingly obvious. The link is supporting other women, which is what I just want to do for the rest of my life, while supporting myself, because I feel like that really helps me too. But giving others enough like a platform to vent, to then be able to unapologetically, without any guilt, think, actually, I blooming deserve to do this for me. And that really is like the passion and the soul of the podcast.
Yeah. And I think this like brings us 360 round to almost like the seed that's been woven through this, which is this role modeling idea, you know, whether it's for your children, whether it's for society, whether it's for parents, whatever it is. But it's coming back to having those honest, frank conversations and just being that embodiment of things that are just real as opposed to perfect. And whatever you're doing in life, but most people listening to this will be in business, you know, it's those things that allow people to really come to you. It's realizing that they can see themselves in you. So actually, when we keep up the shame and the judgment and no one talking about it, it doesn't help our personal lives, but it also doesn't help our business. So I think there's a big message there.
Yeah, it's that human factor.
Yeah.
Because you are such an inspiration to me, Kirsty, because, you know, you've got 3 kids, you're running this amazing business and you seem so on it. But you just telling me about what you did this morning before your cleaner came, I like suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, she's one of us.
Yeah. Oh geez, yeah.
And I think that's a huge comfort. That is a huge comfort. So, you know, thank you for just sharing that, because I'm like, oh my gosh, praise ye.
Well, when I come on your pod, I will share the suitcase story.
Oh my gosh, right.
That has possibly one of the most, like, that's where a lot of my shame is tied up. So I will leave everyone a cliffhanger with that, and they'll have to come and listen to that episode.
Oh my gosh, I'm so looking forward to that.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sure so many of our listeners got tons out of this. So where's the best place to find the pod, I guess, and also to find you and find out more about what you do?
So yeah, the pod is, as you said, it's called The Bits in Between. So that will be on all your podcast platforms. And I'm most active on my Instagram, actually, which is @fireflyformula. So yeah, please come say hi.
Fabulous. We'll put all those links in the show notes. And then before I let you go, Carelle, our final closing question that we ask all guests, which is, if you were to walk on stage to give the keynote speech of your life, what anthem would you want to walk on stage to?
Oh my gosh, this has literally probably got nothing to do with my life, but it's the song that really makes me so happy, and I'm so embarrassed to say it, but I feel like the best version of me comes out when I listen to this. Oh God.
What is it?
Come on,
Eileen. Brilliant choice. I can't hear that song without transporting myself to like 3 a.m. in a terrible nightclub in Brighton when I was about, I don't know, 16, and it was like the closing song. and all you could hear was people just like giving it some, you know, everyone thought they were like Mariah.
I give it. And do you know what? I can be in any sort of negative place, and I listen to that song and I immediately feel like the world is a really good place to be in, and all is okay. So that's my go-to song, because I am just me prancing around and just feeling really blooming lucky to be here.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, my lovely. We're all already so excited about the podcast, and just good luck with it. You deserve all the success with this.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kirsty.